Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm BCEO, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the latest episode of The Boys. So, a couple of things. One, spoilers ahead, but two, also some trigger warnings. If you don't like, if you don't like abortions, I'm trying to think of what else. Um, well, basically, a lot of gross stuff. We'll be talking a lot about that, mostly because it's The Boys. But that's like the main one I wanted to just make sure that we're clear on being like, ooh, gross, um, and dealing with that piece. But for now, let's move on. Oh, I remember. Um, Also, just some violent stuff that Homelander has done, specifically expeditional shit. I guess the best way to describe it. Basically, like doing sexual acts in front of other people, or being forced to do so, I guess the best way to phrase it. So if these types of things make you uncomfortable, um, I highly recommend not watching this video. However, if you've watched The Boys and you really want to talk about it, or hear my thoughts on it, then stay on this video. So we're going to divide this up into three parts. Oh, sorry, three parts. We're going to first talk about Starlight. Then oh, I'm sorry, no, we're going to talk about first we're going to first talk about Huey, then we're going to talk about Starlight, then we're going to talk about Butcher. I'm sorry, no, then we're going to talk about Homelander. And Butcher will be discussed, and so will others, but I mean, those are going to be the main three stories of this one. So Huey's big story arc was basically he wants to get V for his dad so he can live. So he has Kimiko come with him to ask A Train to get V for him. A Train's like, you gotta be crazy. And basically, Huey's like, you owe me big time. And he's like, I saved your life. And he's like, I don't think that's enough. I think you need to do more because everything that's happened that's been bad has been because of you. And so it convinces A Train to do so. However, he asks that, if this be if after this, that the whole thing is done. And Huey's like, yeah, sure. However, I and A Train don't believe that. And to be fair, Huey doesn't either. So during all of that, A Train leaves, and we'll talk about him in a second. Um, that's when the Rising Suns start shooting at the two of Kimiko and Huey. He gets shot in the ankle. She then helps him into this building. They get into an office, and she's trying to teach him self defense. So she breaks off a file cabinet drawer, gives it to him as a shield, and gives him a box cutter. And she explains to him in the only way she knows how to, which is physical gestures, on how to kill somebody. And she breaks scissors and gets the massive straight edge blade broken off of the straight edge and starts going to get ready to kill. She takes out the first guy with a scissor or a half a scissor to the face. She then goes to attack the other person. When she does that, she gets grenade launched to the gut, where she gets exploded right in half and laid out to the ground. That's when one of the guys goes after Huey. Huey starts to defend himself. Does a decent job, especially for a guy who doesn't really fight. Taking him, taking a lot of damage. He cuts the guy in the leg. Then the guy cuts Huey in the leg, and he goes to stab Huey after knocking the file cabinet drawer out of his hands. Huey then stabs him in the gut, slices him open, slices the guy's wrist, and then his throat, leaving him to die. That's when Huey goes to help Kimiko. Kimiko pulls herself back together. She beats the girl, um, goes to help her up, and she explains the girl, I mean, to Kimiko that why she's doesn't like her, and that it's because of her that she's the way she is, and that she should be basically destroyed because of it. Kimiko then walks Huey out of there, and the two of them leave. During that, Huey gets the vial of V from A Train, where he actually says that um, Huey actually says to A Train that he forgives him, and that it's over. He then goes to use it on his dad and decides against it, especially after what Butcher says to him. Specifically the fact that Butcher tried to use it and it didn't work. Um, and that he's better than that, meaning like Huey's better than that. So Huey decides against not doing it. He then takes a break outside to kind of cool down, and it looks like his mother found the V, used it on his father, and his father's now alive. And that's the end of Huey's story. So then we're going to talk about Starlight. So the episode starts with Starlight going to the president and stating that he's got a problem, she can fix it. Basically stating she's going to be the figurehead to kind of help push his campaign to be against Soups out of the military. So not against Soups completely, but enough to tank Vought's stocks, so therefore they can be on top again. He's reluctant but agrees. She goes back to her, I guess, base of operations to explain to the team what's going on. And during all of this, she finds out that Firecracker and Vought have set up outside of the home where they are going to be basically doing a 6 hour live stream, live episode of Firecracker talking about everything that Starlight has done wrong. So the first thing being Starlight's first ever rescue, which apparently during that a innocent civilian mother goes blind because Starlight didn't know how to use her powers. Starlight gets mad about that. Before that happened, or during that time, I should say, um, Butcher and Butcher and um, MM go over to go discuss some things with Firecracker. They get information that costs them $50,000, um, and they go up to her and basically blackmail her, stating that she's got to stop what she's doing, or else they're going to post the information about her at 28 sleeping with a 15-year-old boy. She then does something that Butcher was not expecting, and Butcher was even shocked by, was she actually clicks send herself. It gets sent right into the ether of the internet, and she goes out there to confess her sins on how she basically had relations with a 15-year-old and how she was blessed and cleansed by the grace of God, and that she's now better. So during all that, yeah, I can't even make this up. Um, the people love her still, and during that interaction between them, Butcher took Firecracker's keys. He gives them to Frenchie, who goes over there to basically snoop around. That's when Ezekiel finds him and throws him right out the trailer. And during all of this time as well, Firecracker's talking about the time where Starlight got an abortion, and she gets really ticked off and goes and leaves. So MM tries to stop Starlight while um, Butcher goes to help Frenchie. Frenchie gets thrown out of the trailer really hard with ease. Butcher comes in, one of freezes one of Ezekiel's arms, smashes it to bits, and then gets choked out by him, and then wakes up with Ezekiel literally blown up, blood everywhere. Um, Starlight beats Firecracker down to a bloody pulp. I mean, really bad. And then she then gets stopped by MM. Basically explains to her that there's cameras everywhere. They then leave. Butcher does not explain anything that happened, mostly because he doesn't know. They all leave. During this as well, um, Frenchie explains to his boyfriend that he was the one that killed the guy's parents and his whole family. He basically says to him, "Stay away from me. Don't come near me ever again." The president calls Starlight to explain that he doesn't want anything to do with her anymore, mostly due to the fact that there's news articles and everything else how she's a terrorist and everything else, and how she's psychotic. Which, based on those camera views, yeah, she does. And that was the end of Starlight's story for that episode. So now we're moving on to Homelander. So last episode, Homelander was basically telling himself to go home, where it all began, which is apparently the underground facility that they basically bred him there. So he does a lot of horrible things. He comes down with a ice cream whale cake, um, and explains how he wants to get back with the family. And the first guy who was, I want to say the janitor, but I'm not 100% sure what his actual title was. But apparently, Homelander remembers him when he was in the oven burning. However, he didn't. His skin didn't crisp or anything else, but it did hurt. He apparently he made sure to remember the piece that pissed him off the most, which was apparently while everyone else was watching him and studying him, this guy was in the back crumbling up pieces of paper and throwing it into the trash and making a game out of it. So Homelander wants to play that game with him. Now, this guy doesn't remember what Homelander's talking about whatsoever. So during this, he begins to basically state how, he would get mad about all this stuff and everything else and explain the situation and everything else. And finally says to the guy, hey, why don't you go in the oven for me? And everyone's trying to convince him otherwise. And Homelander's like, no, it's either going to be him or him and his whole family. So during that, obviously, the guy gets in, Homelander cranks up the heat, and the guy crisps up completely, burns to a crisp, and dies. Homelander thinks it's funny, blah blah blah, basically stating how he forgives the guy now. We then have the head guy, who's basically talking to Homelander, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you were always good to me. Yep, until you weren't." And he's like, "What?" He goes, "There was a one thing that happened when I was younger, and the nickname you gave me was Squirt." He goes, "You remember how I got that nickname?" And the guy's like, so he basically explains that the reason why I got that nickname was because, as a growing boy, you have some needs. And there was only a few minutes on the night shift where nobody was watching. And he used that time specifically to do what he needed to do. Well, he got caught one of those times by this guy who basically started laughing and then called him Squirt because of it. So the guy's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that, blah, blah, blah." And Homelander goes, "Fine. You know what? You're going to jerk off in front of everyone here. You're going to do it in front of everyone, and we're going to laugh at you." And the guy thinks he's joking, and Homelander goes, "No, you're going to do it." So he begins to try to do it, is unsuccessful, and Homelander's basically like, "Okay, I'm going to give you some motivation. You either do it, or I'm going to laser it off." And so the guy tries really hard to do it, still can't. And Homelander's just like, "Oh, I guess that's something that happens to some guys. Not me, but other people." So he then laser beams him right in the groin and basically kills him. Although he doesn't die right away. That's when the head woman, Barbara, comes in and states that he is to put the guy out of his misery. So Homelander steps on him and crushes his skull. So because of that, he then has a conversation with Barbara. So Barbara makes it very clear that she's not really truly afraid of him necessarily, because even if he kills all of them, he's still looking for love so badly. Because Vought, one of the good things that they did was, even though they created a monster of him, he also was so needy for love that he would do anything. Because she basically explained that all these walls you think you couldn't escape, you could have escaped at any time. You chose not to because you wanted love and like so bad that you would do anything. And so that's why you're here now. Homelander doesn't like that. So he then doesn't like what she says, but he leaves her in the bad room with all of her dead coworkers or staff. Um, Blown to bits, ripped apart, whatever you want to say. And he melts the door shut so she can't get out. And he goes up the elevator covered in blood. Um, Basically, just happy that the thing was done and he's back to the way he was. And that was the end of the episode. One of the big things I wanted to bring up though was oh, there's obviously the big scene with the Deep and Sister Sage where he does the lobotomy on her, which is extremely gross. But also, we know Butcher took V again to try to stop the cancer. I think, based on all like the movements in his body and everything else, that there was an episode in Diabolical, which was the animated series that was come out of the like multiverse of the boys type of thing, where this guy's wife was dying of cancer. He gives her V, and it didn't give her superpowers; it gave her cancer superpowers. So I'm thinking the same thing here, where Butcher, the V worked, but it didn't work on him. It worked on the cancer cells inside his body that is now causing whatever to grow inside of him and protect him. So I'm very curious to see if that's actually accurate or not, but we'll have to wait and see. But let me know what you guys thought about this episode in the comments down below. Did you like it? Did you not? And why? And as always, if you like the content you see, please make sure to like and subscribe down below. Other than that, this is going to be Beastly Eel signing out. Have a great night.